Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you again to a new edition of Beyond the Cancer interview series. Um, my invitation, my invitee today, it's Renee Exelbert. She's psychologist and two-time cancer survivor. Renee, thank you very much for accepting our invitations, and we are very happy to be with us today.
I'm grateful to be here.
Uh, Today we are going to touch um, together with Rene the subject of mind-body connections to better cope with cancer. As I mentioned in previous episodes of the series, coping with cancer it's one of my expertise fields. So everything related with coping it's for interest for me. But to begin our interview, I will ask you to uh, share a little bit of your experience. And moreover, I know that you found Metamorphosis Center for Psychological and Physical Change.
Yes,
I guess this two-time cancer survivor, let's say, was an involved to develop these centers.
yes,
So, could you please share with our audience the mission, the values, the concept, the idea of the center?
sure. Sure. Well, metamorphosis, as you know, suggests evolution and changing. And I think a lot about butterflies, right? Starting off as a caterpillar and going through this transformation experience until they can literally take flight as a butterfly. And when I think about my journey with cancer, that's really what it was for me. You start off the journey in a terrifying state, and you go through so many physical and psychological transformations. And so when I think about when I was first diagnosed to now, I've changed a lot in my own experience and my own identity. I've always been a psychologist, and I started out working as a psychologist in a pediatric cancer center. I was working with children diagnosed with cancer. And after 6 years working in that center, I loved what I did, but I was surrounded by a lot of trauma. And so after 6 years, I said, enough, and I'm going to leave. And I left in April, and in July, I was diagnosed with my own cancer. So I'm very much a mind body person. I very much believe that our thoughts impact our body and our body impacts our thoughts. And so I started really researching everything I could that would put cancer at bay. And a huge thing was exercise. So I started integrating exercise into my work. And I eventually became a personal trainer. And I eventually became a bodybuilding competitor. And I realized that as I was working with clients, just showing them how to do different exercises because I believe that exercise would help their depression and their anxiety. I realized I needed to be licensed in this, right? And so I did become a personal trainer. And then I ended up changing my psychology practice into one that integrates exercise. So now I do both exercise and psychotherapy in my practice. But then I merged the two and I ended up finding this technique, which is called Visual Emotional Kinetics. And it's a whole theory that I utilize when I do my work here.
This was the next questions about this innovative method of yours. What exactly is visual emotional kinetics? We understand the words, but
Yeah.
put it together, what you thought about.
Yeah, so I very much believe in the power of visualization. I very much believe that our thoughts can impact our health and our functioning. Um, when I was going through my own cancer experience, I constantly thought positively, and I constantly visualized Pac-Man eating up my cancer cells. I visualized myself as a sunflower, opening my leaves up and taking in healing energy from the sun and from the universe. And so I very much believe in positive thoughts and visualization. And I also believe in the power of exercise. And so I created this technique where I integrate positive thoughts, visualization, and movement. And for instance, whatever issue a client of mine is working on, I try and think about what the ultimate goal is that they're moving towards, or what struggle they want to overcome. And I think about a movement that is going to help them get there. So, for instance, I was working with a young girl who's a perfectionist and had trouble accessing any kind of support around her because she took on this identity that she didn't need any support. So, one of the things that I instructed her to do was to think about how powerful it would be to get the help that she needed and not have to act so strong. And then incorporate this visual of seeing people hugging her and loving her. And then the movement would literally be a chest fly of opening herself up to move towards taking in support from the environment and bringing it back in. And so the combination of first the powerful thought combined with the visualization of seeing it, seeing the movement, and then the exercise of literally opening yourself up and pulling in support and strength from the environment is a really powerful thing. And then when you do that repetitively, it can really make a difference in someone's treatment. I was working with a young woman who had her husband die, and she had everybody in her life supporting her, but she didn't feel the support, right? And so we happened to use the similar kind of exercise where she would close her eyes and visualize all of these people around her. And once again, open herself up with a chest fly and see herself bringing everyone towards her to experience that warmth and that love. And so I use a lot of exercises, bicep curls and push-ups, and but it helps the person either overcome a challenge or an adversity or move towards something that they're wanting through this combination of positive thoughts, visualization, and movement. It's really cool. It's the merging of three things that we know help with disease and illness, all scientifically proven to help. But this process of integrating the three of them, I think, is really powerful. And I've seen beautiful things happen. And I myself use it on a daily basis. When I go to the gym and I do push-ups, I see myself going down on the floor and thinking about cancer and all of the bad things that I've been through. And then I physically push myself up and I feel myself supporting myself and I see myself as healthy and strong. And I do this on a daily basis with tons of exercises, and I live that way.
You mentioned several times this concept of positivity. Yes,
Mhm.
positivity. Um, we I bring it into attention because nowadays everyone is talking about positivity, and we don't have to fall in this trap of tyranny of positivity.
Of course.
Because if a person is was not a positive all his life or her life, you can't expect after a diagnosis to be
Of
more
course.
positive
Of
than he or
absolutely.
she was. So
I
you
think, yeah.
please.
I think it's really, I think when you're going through a health scare, um, it's terrifying. I actually have recently gone through another health scare, which was quite terrifying. And it's very difficult when you're in the midst of that to be positive and think all of these thoughts. But I think that it's really important always to come back to gratitude. I think it's really important to look at your previous life and see how you have coped before with adversity, and just have that belief that whatever it is, you're going to get through it, and employ whatever techniques you can to move your brain in that direction. And so even when you don't feel positive and you feel like everything is awful, it's hard to stay positive when you're in the midst of such devastation. I think like you have to use every resource in your body to like try and move you to that place because they say that where the brain goes, the body follows, right? Um, and we know that with like rewiring the neural pathways in our brain, the more we think positive thoughts or the more we rewire our brain towards overcoming something, the more our brain moves in that direction. And so it's incredibly difficult, but I think that we have to use every resource to try and do that.
As I always said, fear comes as natural, but hope and positivity and the energy, we have to learn how to cope with them. And now we arrive to this to the topic of coping. And as I mentioned, coping is something that every cancer patients have to learn because
Yeah.
it's a process, it's a learning process, sometimes a lifelong learning process. Is not
Yes.
nothing something natural, for example, like defensive mechanism. And from your opinion, or both experience and your let's say uh, journey, yes, through the disease, what are the main barriers that cancer patients face when learn how to cope with the disease?
Barriers with learning how to cope with the disease.
Yeah.
I think it's really hard, the things that you go through. And I think that, as you were saying, it is a lifelong journey. I once had a doctor say to me, cancer is the gift that keeps on giving. And at the time, I didn't understand that, but it is the gift that keeps on giving because you're never quite finished with it, right? Like even when you're done with your treatment, they're always looking at you with greater surveillance. And this medication that you took could cause this. And now that you had this, they want to make sure that you don't have this. And so years later, you can still be dealing with fear, right? Or scares. Like I just told you, I just went through a health scare. And so I think that you're constantly having to employ these coping techniques that if you didn't have previously, you have to work really hard on implementing them. And I think in addition to coping techniques, it's also the way you live your life. For me, when I was diagnosed, I rapidly changed the way that I ate. I became a clean eater. I was a candy girl. I injected sugar like heroin. I really loved sugar and I occasionally have sugar, but my body now craves broccoli. And my food is my pharmacy. And when I eat healthy food, I visualize the positive effects that it's having on my body. I see green, broccoli coming in and removing the extra estrogen from my body. I see walnuts removing inflammation in my body. It's a very meditative process for me when I have food because I know that food can be a pharmacy. Um, in terms of like coping techniques, I'm constantly trying to live in a more grateful state. I'm constantly trying to lower my stress level. I pay attention to my posture. I pay attention to my body. I pay attention to the things that I take in, who I surround myself with. And I think that we have to constantly re-up our game and constantly come back to those practices that make us healthy. And even now, as a psychologist, when I sit with a couple who are screaming at each other and I find my body, intertwined in this chaos as they're screaming, I very quickly come to see that my shoulders are clenched and my forehead, right? And I realize that I'm taking it in and I take a breath and I reshift my posture and I sit back. And then I'm sure on the way home to turn on spa music and bring it all down. And when I get home, I wash my hands to get rid of everyone else's problems. And so I'm constantly trying to employ these coping techniques.
Uh, you are also deeply committed, as you mentioned, in advocacy and education. We all knew that cancer is a sinusoidal disease, yes, with bad days, with not so with good days, and so on. Now, from let's say your um, more energetic part of your activity, how you can handle the patients which say that today might not be a good day for exercises, or today it's one of those days that I'm more passive in movements than proactive, to put it this way.
Yeah, I think that
How
we
how
all,
can you motivate them to go
yeah,
further? Because even 1 minute counts a lot in that day.
that's right. That's
So
right. And that's such an important question because I don't think it's all or nothing. I think that there are days where we just don't feel great and we don't feel so positive, but it doesn't have to be go to the gym and do an hour of exercise. It could be just list one thing that you're grateful for today. And tomorrow's another day, right? Like you don't, it doesn't have to be every day you do these things. However, when you have cancer or any illness, you feel a tremendous sense of disempowerment, right? And so it's like, what is the antidote to disempowerment? Do anything that makes you feel a small sense of empowerment. And what can that be? That can be any choice that moves you in a positive direction, the choice of gratitude, the choice of exercise, the choice of thinking positively, the choice of reaching out to a friend for support, the choice of watching a silly movie, even the choice of staying home today and taking care of yourself, and you're not in the mood to deal with anybody and just kind of having a day where you're introspective and listening to yourself and deciding how you are going to empower yourself for whatever that means in that particular day.
um, as you to as you mentioned before, you were, let's say, rational, or not rational, more emotional before the cancer diagnosis, with a lot of hobbies, yes, sugar, candies, etc. After the diagnosis, you became more rational, yes, you visualize all the things,
Yes.
the emotions.
Yes.
This is one of our main battles or struggles as psycho-oncologists, to succeed to transform the emotional, yes, thoughts after a cancer diagnosis into a rational one. How you did it, and what advice do you have for the cancer patients to succeed to transform the emotional into rational after a cancer diagnosis? Because there is the key in
Yeah.
the transformation. We can't
I
remain forever emotional. We
yeah.
have to act. And
Yep.
if we act, we became more rational, and we see the rationality in everything we are doing further. So we see a purpose, yes, we see the hope, and we see everything. As you mentioned, we visualize the things. So how you did it, and how do you think others should approach
Yeah,
this
I
topic?
think it comes down to that word of disempowerment. I think that any illness is a very disempowering experience. And for me personally, I felt very betrayed by my body, and I felt like I was tremendously out of control, right? Like my body was out of control. And so becoming a patient is such a debilitating experience where so much is taken away from you. And so I think that in whatever way you can regain control is like a very powerful coping technique. And so for each person, I think that's going to be different. Each person has to think of small things that they can do to get back in control. I was recently working with a family who lost a baby, and they felt a tremendous sense of disempowerment. And so the structure was literally one thing that you can do each day that gives you a sense of stability, that gives you a sense of control, whatever that is, whether it's take a walk or decide that you're going to, have a whatever it is. One thing each day that you can do that that starts to make you feel a little bit more in the driver's seat, right? And I think that everyone can come up with one thing. And then there's a list of things, whether it's eating well or exercising, meditating, surrounding yourself with more positive people, music, therapy, touch, religion. There's so many things that we can do. And so it's like, what's one small thing that you can do? You don't have to dramatically change your life, just one small thing, because small little steps lead to bigger change. I didn't start out a healthy eater and a personal trainer. Now I'm a gym rat. I live in the gym now. I didn't start that way. I started out the same way as most people do, where it's like, ugh, I don't want to do this today. Right. And over time, it became like, this is the thing that makes me feel in control. I know that I'm doing something good for my body. So it was something that took time. It was baby step after baby step that eventually led, small habits that eventually lead to patterns. And I think that that's how we are in our regular lives with any goal, right? It's small habits that eventually turn into like the way that you live.
This is one of other principle in psychology, one
Hmm.
thing at a time. So,
Yeah.
uh, as I guess it was the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius that mentioned that wrote that we have this tendency to see all our life all at once, which
Hmm.
is a big mistake. We have to see each day, yes, to visualize each day with the emotions that each day bring us, and not to see in the
Big picture.
future, in the big picture.
Right,
uh,
because we get overwhelmed. And so, and that's with all of life. That's not just with illness. I remember when I was getting my doctoral degree and I had all of these obstacles to overcome. And my husband said to me, baby steps, right? If you think about all that lies in front of you, you'll become incredibly overwhelmed. So you're right. It's about being present. It's about today. And whether we're a patient with a disease or not, none of us knows what we have in store for tomorrow. And so it's about today. It's about making one choice today, and that's it.
uh, we are approaching the end of the interview, but I can't end it without talking about your book. But I will start with a Latin aphorism that said that mens sana in corpore sano. Yes, healthy mind in healthy body. And your book, it's Chemo Muscles. Um, it's a motivation, yes, about and uh, could you share some insights from this book? What was the idea behind writing this book? What is the key message from this book, and why people should have it,
Yeah.
um, if you can?
Well, they should get it because I need 2 cents for every book, right? Everyone thinks that when you write a book, you make so much money. I need the 2 cents that they're going to get from. Why should they buy my book? There's so much in my book, so many nuggets, I think. For one, I talk about the experience of first being the doctor, right? I was a psycho-oncologist working at a pediatric cancer center, and then I became the patient. And so I look at the experience of being both a doctor or a healthcare provider and then the patient. And I think that there's so much that we can learn from both lenses, but I think it's really, really pertinent that healthcare professionals know the power that they have to impact a patient's journey, whether that be from their nonverbal movements, their eye contact, the words that they say, the gestures that they make, whether or not they introduce themselves, whether or not they have eye contact with if they're loving. Um, it's so critically important because just one phrase can impact a patient's entire trajectory. And we know that your relationship to your healthcare team can literally change your disease progression, can actually impact your longevity. So that's really important. Number one, I spoke about a lot of different coping techniques. At the end of each chapter, I talk about touch and humor and scientifically proven ways to cope. I talk about my own transformation with exercise and nutrition and how it's so critically important. And I talk about this mind-body connection and visual emotional kinetics, gratitude, all these things. And I think it's critically important for people to sit down and when they're eating, have a more meditative experience of how food is impacting their body at a cellular level and to see the food destroying cancer cells. And when they're exercising, to see the exercise improving the disease in their body and to visualize health. And so I talk about all those concepts.
Uh, I noticed that you mentioned several times also the word gratitude, and it come into my mind a Japanese motto that said that gratitude is the key to success. So if we have gratitude to all our social support or within our community, this is the key to our success, because the path or the path to success, it's led by gratitude. Um, Renee, thank you very much for being with us today. Thank you
Thank you.
for sharing this, let's say, innovative but somehow outside the box uh, vision and thinking about cancer disease, and also about sharing your both roles, as you mentioned, psychologist and then patient, and this was very interesting.
Thank you.
The
Thank you so
the
much.
and I wish you good luck further with your book. I wish you, and I wait for the other one to come, and good luck in your both projects. And as you mentioned, we have to make the change there where we live, within our communities. So if every one of us is making one little thing in the big picture, it will be completely different. So thank you very much again, and good luck.
Thank you, Adrian. Sending you much light.
Thank you.